Ryan, or Nezgar and Vanna, caching handle with my wife, from Regina. This is a presentation I've done a couple times for the library down there and modified it for here. So I guess, very basic question. So how many people here have just started geocaching? I guess is awesome. Perfect audience for this. So
we have a pre-starter, about pre-starter.
Great. This is just for you, the basics. So here's a quick little intro video from Groundspeak, the company that runs geocaching.com themselves. A little intro, kind of cute.
Geocaching is a high-tech treasure hunting game played throughout the world by adventure seekers equipped with GPS devices. The basic idea is to go outside and locate hidden containers called geocaches using a GPS-enabled device. The GPS coordinates of geocaches are listed on geocaching.com. All you need to do is plug these coordinates into your GPS device and head outside to find the cache. Geocaching is a great way to explore locations near and far. With over 1 million geocaches hidden worldwide, there are geocaches for every type of adventurer to find. The journey in discovering a geocache is often the greatest reward. Your GPS device will help you navigate close to the cache, but once you are close, you'll have to discover the geocache on your own. Geocaches can be very cleverly hidden. When you find a cache, sign the logbook. If you take something from the cache, leave something of equal or greater value in its place so that there's something there for the next geocachers to find. When you're done, please remember to re-hide the cache exactly as you found it. When you return from your geocaching adventure, visit geocaching.com to log your find and share your experiences with the community. Anyone can use coordinates found at geocaching.com to locate geocaches. All you need to get started is a free basic membership at geocaching.com and a GPS device or GPS-enabled mobile phone. Ready to give it a try? Visit the membership page to create your geocaching.com membership or the Getting Started page for information on buying a GPS device, choosing a geocache that's right for you, and more helpful tips.
Seems simple? So, who geocaches? Pretty much anybody can geocache. Even my daughter found a cache when she was 3 months old with us. Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to get outside and go for a walk, go for a hike, quick find while you're out doing errands. For all different types of difficulties in terrain. So you can pick a difficulty 1 that should be a walk up and find it right away, all the way up to a difficulty 5 where you could be needing some serious brain power or figuring out camouflage or something like that. There's some examples here we can show. What do you need? Well, they mentioned in the video, like nowadays, in the old days it used to be you buy a very expensive $500 plus GPS receiver, and this device would show you just numbers on a black and white screen. Maybe an arrow, but usually just a directional number of degrees. Things that come a long way, handheld GPSs have come down in price, color screens, mapping on them, and now the advent of smartphones where, well gee, it already has GPS built in, internet connectivity, beautiful screens, all that stuff. So the barrier of entry is way lower, so it's becoming very popular. Where do you find them? Well, anywhere. This is a snapshot of Seattle, I think, but I could bring up this area, or if any of you looked at the Living Skies website, there's links to the geocaching maps which show all the new geocaches in the area. Lots to do. You can go out and spend all day finding hundreds, or go out and find one creative one in town here. There's a number that have been published that will definitely be interesting. Why do you go geocaching? Well, it's, like I said, it's a incentive to get outdoors. I mean, even myself, I was like, well, I'd just rather sit on the computer. It's why would I want to go there? There's nothing. Go for a walk and do what? Well, now there's a destination at the end. So you end up going for a hike probably 4 times longer than you would have otherwise because there's a destination that you want to get to. So it's always kind of fun to have that objective. Recreational, environmentally friendly, get outside, outdoors. Especially like I lived in Vancouver up until about 5 years ago when we moved to Regina, and it was a pretty cool way to explore the city and discover the landmarks. And as a tourist in a different area, it's a great way to learn about the little hidden treasures of a community that maybe aren't in the tour books and stuff like that. So it's like a little tour guide because every cache has its own little description, which is written by a local. So maybe some little bit of information or local knowledge that you wouldn't have gained otherwise. You can geocache anytime, even at nighttime. There are night caches. There was one last night, if you heard about that. Yeah, there's a couple in Regina, about 5 or 6 basic little fire tacks. I mean, you use your GPS to get to the start location, but then there's all kinds of things, little retro reflective reflectors. You can follow that, make a little game out of that. It's kind of fun. The nighttime experience just adds and heightens the senses, so it makes it kind of fun. The history of geocaching. So this cuts off at 2010, but in 2000, GPS has been around for a while, probably since the 80s, but until May 2nd, 2000, for use by civilians, it was actually purposefully degraded. The accuracy of GPS, you would be best to get maybe 150 meters within a 150 meter radius. So it's pretty much useless for specific location. Even GPSs at the time, which could route like for your car and stuff like that, it could think that you're on the next block over. So it was really only useful for military use. And then in 2000, Bill Clinton said, let's turn off this selective availability feature. And then the next day, this guy named Dave Ulmer near Portland, Oregon, went out into the countryside and planted a big, what do you call it, 5-gallon pail out in the forest, posted on a Usenet group, like a discussion forum. There was no geocaching.com at the time. Posted online, and within 5 days someone had found it. It was like, wow, this is a revolution of you can literally give someone a set of coordinates and someone can walk up to within a couple of meters and find a specific location. So that's when geocaching was born. And then about 6 months later, I think, is when geocaching.com, and there was a number of other websites that are still around but not nearly as popular. 2001, Saskatchewan's first geocache was hidden. It's east of Saskatoon. 2004, there was 92,000 active geocaches. 2007, 500,000. In 2010, there was 1 million, so that was a big landmark. So 10 years later, or 9 years later, 1 million caches. And then only 2 years later, February 28th, 2013, which was past the end of this, was 2 million hit. So that was another big milestone. So in 3 years, there's as many as the previous 9. And I haven't looked lately, but I think as of today it's about 2.6 million. So a year later, it's almost like halfway through doubling again, so it's pretty amazing. So, like you saw in the video, when you find a geocache, the basics, minimal thing in a geocache is there's a logbook. So you go there, you sign your name, and that's really your proof and your claim to be able to log it as a find. If the cache is big enough, it'll have tradable items. You're welcome to take something if you leave it. So it's great for the kids in that aspect. So there's trade items. If you take something, you leave something of greater or equal value is the philosophy. And then return the geocache to its original location, and then go back onto geocaching.com and mark your find. And then the owner will get this little note. Everybody else can see your log, so that's kind of the fun. You can see everybody's adventures. And I like to encourage people to write more than just TFTC or thanks for the cache. Put a little bit of information about your, what did you see along the way, or what did you experience, who were you with? That kind of stuff is always really interesting for the other people visiting the cache, and a kind of a nice thanks for the person who did the thing in the first place, to a little bit of a rewarding reading those as well. Who hides them? Well, it's not some big monolithic organization out there. It's other people out there just like you that enjoy the game. And it's just a feedback loop. So people that hide them get the reward is reading the logs of the people that find it, and the people that find them get the adventure of discovering the place that the person brought them to. If anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt. So how does GPS work? So this description says that it's a global orbiting system of 24 satellites, so that your location can be pinpointed anywhere on Earth. This is a little bit dated because I think they're actually up to 32 satellites now. Not all of them may be active, but it allows the US government to have backups and bring them in and out of service and just add more coverage. And also a lot of new GPSs now. There's other countries building their own complementary networks that do the same thing, because nobody wants to be reliant on the US government, especially Russia, China. They're all building their own stuff, so it's kind of interesting because now a lot of the newer GPSs, smartphones, will actually use the Russian GLONASS system as well. So you think, well, this is kind of redundant, obviously, but the nice thing is if you use both networks at the same time, all it does is help your accuracy, especially in cities and stuff, because you need to see, I think that's on the next slide, you need to see at least 3 satellites to get a specific 2-dimensional location on the planet. So these aren't circles, they're kind of spheres. It's called trilateration. Each GPS has, it's kind of technical, but they have an atomic clock, and your GPS receiver, all it's doing is measuring the time it takes for that signal, that time signal, to reach from the satellite to you, comparing it. We're talking microseconds difference between each one. It measures the distance, and it can figure out your location. By adding additional satellites with a 4th and 5th, it can get the 3-dimensional, like your elevation and all this stuff. So it's pretty amazing how it works, but you don't really need to know how it works to do geocaching, but it's just kind of interesting to think how it does. What is a GPS receiver? Well, at a minimum, they give you your latitude, which is the north-south, and your longitude, which is your east-west, as a number. These are the handheld, a bunch of different handheld units from different manufacturers. They have mapping capabilities now, but they allow you to mark a waypoint, or such as a geocache. It's a given set of coordinates. It knows where that is, it knows where you are, and then it's just the mathematics to calculate the direction, the distance, and that's how you use it to navigate.
What's the difference between waypoints and geocaches on your GPS?
What's the difference between waypoints and geocaches? So waypoints literally are just a given set of coordinates, the longitude and the latitude. So that would be like, a specific point on the world. A geocache is obviously a container or something at a specific set of coordinates. So essentially it is a waypoint, and all of these old GPSs, that's exactly what you would do. It would just be the coordinates. The nice thing with these GPSs nowadays is that it will take the coordinates as well as all the additional information about the geocache. So you can see not just the location, but the description, the size, difficulty.
I don't have one of those.
Yeah.
I just have the old 76.
Right. Yeah. So the Garmin 76 is an example of one that didn't directly support geocaching like a lot of the ones do now. So yeah, you'll have the coordinates and maybe the name with 14 characters or something. Mm-hmm. So it's great for getting you to the location, but if you want to have more information like the description, size, difficulty, terrain, hints, you would print it out or have it on a mobile device or something like that.
Write it in a book.
Or write it down. Yeah.
It seems like the GPS that I have, when I find the geocache and I press enter when I find it, and it goes over to the waypoints. and it disappears off the geocaching page.
Yeah, so the 76 had a feature where it kind of supported geocaching, where you could mark it as found, but the geocache is just a certain type of waypoint. So there's a bunch of different icons. You can have X's and flags and whatever, but the geocache is just one icon. And if you're navigating to that type of waypoint, it would mark it as found, and then it would put it on a calendar. And there's programs you can use on your computer to like download which ones you had marked that way, but it's still kind of kludgy. So I know some people that have started geocaching using these automotive GPS receivers. They're not designed for pedestrian use. They're designed for going on roads. So you can put geocache waypoints on and it'll navigate you to them on the road, but most of them don't really give you any help to specifically navigate down to a couple meters. You'll see on the map, like, here's your icon and here's the cache, and you have to sit, like, wander around until you kind of get them to line up. Whereas a lot of these handheld ones, and even the smartphone apps, it'll literally give you an arrow and a distance, which is immensely more useful to get it down to the specific, 10 meters or whatever that you want to get in. So it can be done. I know people that use newbies and medallions for doing this type of stuff, but I don't recommend it. These are great though for having one that can navigate you to down the roads and stuff like that. And of course, the latest thing is the apps for smartphones. So great thing with smartphones is you don't have to prepare. You used to always have to go online, do what's called a pocket query. You could either load caches into your GPS one at a time by typing them in, connect them to the computer, download them one at a time. Basically, I had to really plan ahead where you were going to go. But with the smartphones, you can say, well, what's the 10 closest to me right now? It's got an internet connection, it's got GPS, so it just says, here's the coordinates, goes to the website, downloads the 10 closest, you can see, okay, let's go to this one right now. No planning required. And this has become one of the main factors of a lot of the newer geocachers, so it's kind of cool. And again, you get all the information about the cache right on your phone, and you can even log it as found, since it has that internet connection, on the spot. So really good find count.
You know how it works on a BlackBerry to decide those, does it work okay?
Pardon?
On a BlackBerry, does anyone know how it works? You can decide those an Android app and then...
There is a BlackBerry application for the older BlackBerries. It's not from geocaching.com. There's one called Geocache Navigator, there's one called Cache Sense. For the BlackBerry 10s, there is CGO, which is a ported Android app. That might be the only one right now that I think of. But there's many for Android, many for iPhone. And the 101. So, what does a geocache look like? Some of you have probably found some already, but the basic traditional containers are your military ammo box. These are fantastic because they're very waterproof. They hold lots of stuff. The smaller size lock and locks, these are also good because, well, these are both very waterproof. But then you start getting into more creative containers. So you've got fake logs that might pull apart or open up. These little bison tubes people hang in trees or stuff in holes, and other stuff like birdhouses where the average person going by would never suspect, but look, there's not actually a place where the bird can go in, it's filled in. And there's a little door that opens up. And then some other pictures that I had collected off the web of some pretty fun caches. So here's a log that put hinges on and it opens up. And caches as big as an old utility box where no one would ever know what it is except a geocacher, and the hint that's listed on the geocache page might have the combination to the lock. So literally, only someone who's looked at the page on geocaching.com would even know how to get into it. And these are great for swapping travel bugs and stuff like that. So that's what we call the travel bug hotel, which we'll also talk about. Even more creative, like a bolt coming out of the wall. Oh, gee, you might have that. You can just screw it on, and I've seen some of these. I don't have any examples on me today, but you'll probably find them out at the vendor tables. Some of these creative hides. The bolt is a fairly classic one where you'll take this piece out of the bolt part, and it'll be bored out in the middle, and that's where you'll have your logbook. Underwater caches. There's ones in the bottom of lakes that you have to dive to. Like this one would have been one that's just tied to a rock or something, so it's floating in there with a pelican case. And this is a picture I took myself in downtown Seattle. It's called Double Bubble Toil and Trouble, and it is camouflaged with silly putty. So there's all kinds of warnings on the page that say, there's lots of people that put gum on the wall. There's not many people that take gum off the wall, so you'll probably get a lot of people's attention if you start pulling stuff off the wall, so you're going to be pretty sure what you find. Anyway, yeah, so I found it after help from a friend, but that's an example of a very high difficulty find, especially since it's in a back alley. There's very limited sky visibility, so the GPS is probably 50 meters off, so you're really sitting there reading through all the previous logs trying to get a hint. And then more extreme caching. So this is some pictures from a cache. It's called As North as It Gets. It's in Alert, Nunavut. Up until I think this year, it was the most northerly cache in the world. And yeah, so people are pretty extreme. This is about I think a 10-kilometer hike out from the military air base up there. But there's a geocache there. So what's in a cache? You got your logbook as a minimum, and then that's what you sign, and then you've got the trade items, and then there's a travel bug here where we'll talk about it. So yeah, your first geocache, obviously there's certain attributes to look on the cache. So the size, if you haven't found one before, going for a micro might be a little ambitious. So you can go for the regular size, or there isn't too many larges, but those are pretty awesome to find when they are, especially in the cities, because they're not going to be very well concealed, unless they're one of those utility boxes that I showed you before. Those are bold. So yeah, so difficulty in trains. 1 is the easiest, 5 is the hardest. They can be rated anywhere from 1 star to 5 stars, and half stars in between, so 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. Yeah, so train 1 is wheelchair accessible. So most people put caches as 1.5 because, well, you have to go off the path. You have to think a wheelchair is pretty limited in its locations it can go, and if you're sitting. Some people use that as a troubleshooting. If you're trying to figure out where it's hidden, you're looking for anything on the cache page to give you a hint. Well, if they've listed it as a 1, it's probably not going to be very high because it has to be reachable from a sitting position, and probably paved. So if you got a sidewalk and grass, well, sitting on the sidewalk, it's got to be reachable without going off the sidewalk. So little things like that. So train 5 is the other end of the spectrum. May require extreme bushwhacking or special equipment like a boat or climbing or scuba gear. Those are harder to find, obviously, and then you've got the difficulty side. So that's where your brain power comes. So difficulty, you can pretty much walk right up to it and it's guaranteed you'll find it. It's pretty easy. And then difficulty 5 will be often, if it's a puzzle, there'll be a complex something you have to figure out before you go out, or extremely well camouflaged. Like, for example, that brick wall with a bolt sticking out, that would probably be rated as a fairly higher difficulty. Although I've seen a few of those now, so it might be not too hard for me. But yeah, you could be staring at a wall looking for one little piece of plaster that comes out or something, and that's tucked in there. But those are kind of fun because those are the ones that people talk about when you meet up with our geocachers. Did you find that one? Like, oh yeah, I found it, but I'm not going to tell you where it is. So you get people that go back 3 or 4 times, and it just adds to that triumph of finding it, right? So here's an example of a cache north of Regina and Last Mountain Lake in, I want to say, November-ish. So the lake was just starting to freeze over, but there's a new cache published out on an island in the lake. So these guys, we're canoeing out to it. Actually, this is Linda, our chair, and Ken's out there in the back, so these are the guys out in the canoe here, ice breaking through the lake. So this cache is rated as a train 5 simply because you have to get a boat to get to it. But they did it, they got there, they got back, and then a couple months later, in January or something, some other cachers, the lake was frozen over, they just walked straight to the cache. Still rated difficulty 5, but hey, the seasons can help you here. So that was pretty awesome. Just wait a little bit. Types of geocaches. So most caches are traditional. So the coordinates that are given on the cache page are where the cache is, the container, the only container. Sign it, log it online, you're done. The next one, a little less common, a multi-cache. So this could be anywhere from 2 to who knows how many stages. The traditional multi-cache would be a container at given coordinates. You open up the container and it'll have either straight up coordinates for the next stage or some kind of calculation or hint you have to do to get to the next stage. Repeat that at the next one until you get to the final location. So that can be used for all kinds of fun things. And a mystery cache, so you'll see these on the map, basically is anything that doesn't fit the previous categories. So these could be bogus coordinates and maybe some kind of puzzle that you do. I don't know, like what's the simple example would be like a crossword or something. You have to sit there and figure out to get the coordinates before you go out. Or it could be, I don't know.
One of the things that we looked for was Rainbow Series, and it was around a road, an old highway, and so you, when you found the coordinates or you found the cache, they would have a number on there, and then to get the
oh, okay, yeah. So an example is
gold, you had to have
so
all the numbers.
I think I know what you mean. We'll see. I've seen another. They remind me of another type. So you might have a series of say 10 or more traditional caches, and inside each one will be a little hint with a single number or a part of a puzzle, and there'll be another cache here. So the information to get the coordinates for this one, you have to piece together from finding a bunch of other caches, and then you'll get the coordinates for that. And they would list that as a mystery with bogus coordinates, and you figure out the right coordinates. So it just adds a bit more of a puzzle challenge. Just kind of good in the winter in Saskatchewan. You get some brain teasers to do when the weather gets nicer. Types of events. So we have the cache in, trash out events. Geocaching.com likes to promote, giving back to the communities and cleaning up garbage, whatever. But it also applies to like tree planting and other kinds of environmental contributions, because with geocaching, the world is the game board, so we like to promote the positive image of cleaning up as well, and geocachers picking up trash when you're doing your stuff. Event cache, pretty much every other gathering of geocachers, anybody can list an event on the website. When you attend, it increments your find count, so it's kind of fun. So it's a great way to meet other geocachers. And a mega event, obviously, the one we're at today, very rare. There's only about, well, at this point, I think 15 around the world any given year. Yeah, excited to be first one in Saskatchewan. And then another cool one is earth caches. So these, there is no physical container, but the Geological Society of America has partnered with geocaching.com. So they have a group of people that started this type of cache where you can visit a location, and the point of it is to learn about earth science. So you go to a location, there might be type of rock formation, they'll have some information about whatever type of geology or whatever the area, and then to log the cache, you have to answer some specific questions. There might be some questions about the types of rocks, what do you see here, what's your estimated height, and basic questions for the beginner, and maybe one or two questions to describe something physically there, to prove you were there, because obviously the idea is that you don't want to be able to just armchair log it without actually physically being there. So if you ask a question that only someone would know, like whether the words on the sign at the bottom or something, it's a pretty good chance that they were physically there, so the owner can check it out. And a couple examples of ones that I've been to. This is one in Regina. There's a Wascana Lake. There's an earth cache there that just talks about the history of the stream that expanded to a lake. And down in Montana, here's one that we did. It's called the Ringing Rocks. Totally out of the way down a back road, but it's kind of interesting. You tap on these rocks with a hammer or a crowbar or something, and every single rock resonates at a different frequency. Very interesting, especially when they say when they take the rocks away, they don't make the sound anymore. It's only when they're on that massive pile. So the earth cache made you walk around it with your track log and provide an estimate of the diameter of the rocks and some history and stuff. Interesting stuff. And then another one, this was in Oregon in the river, the Colorado River Basin. Talking about how the glaciers at the end of the Ice Age, there was a big ice wall basically where in Montana that had broken through and cleared out this entire valley with this massive wall of water. Like, I forget what they called it, yeah, the Columbia Gorge. Millions and billions of gallons of water just, going through in one big wall. There's something to imagine, like water up to here. This is like a quarter mile up or something. So in geocaches, the other things you may find are these trackable items. So you've got trackable tags, geocoins. They made these for a while. They were the film container lids, but they've got each a little trackable number. So if you find one of these things, you can type in that code and log it online as retrieved. The owner will get an email as well. And then you'll have it with you. The next geocache you find, or whichever, you place it in the cache, and when you log it online, you log it that you dropped in that cache. Now the nature of geocaching is that obviously every cache has coordinates, so the website can calculate the distance that that object now moved from one cache to the other. The next person picks it up, moves it from another, and it goes on. And then it keeps track of the distance traveled, and whoever released it in the first place might have given it a mission. So if you can help move it, and then the site has features where it'll actually show it on a map. And I think I have some examples here of one that I found. So this is a geocoin that I found in British Columbia when I lived there, early on when I started geocaching. So bringing up the coin, it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Get home, log it in, and I can see that this thing started out on the east coast of the US. Someone picked it up, dropped it in Nova Scotia. Someone picked it up from Nova Scotia, dropped it in the UK. They picked it up from the UK, dropped it in northern Scotland, northwest England. Like, these are all different people that picked it up. They've logged their pictures. So here's someone down here that's in East Midlands or Yorkshire, somewhere around there. I forget where I grabbed the picture, but it draws on the map all of the stops that this coin made. These are all different geocaches that this particular coin that I was holding had been to. Through France, so someone took a picture of this same coin that I'm holding in front of the Eiffel Tower, St. Petersburg, and it had been through Czech Republic, Italy, Germany. Then it jumped over 9,000 kilometers up to Hong Kong, and hey, picture of it at the skyline. And then someone picked it up from Hong Kong and brought it to Vancouver. Well, actually to Vernon, and then from Vernon to Vancouver. And then this is a picture I took. It was 273 days to go to the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, so I thought the owner might get a kick out of seeing that. And dropped it off in Saskatoon. Someone then brought it down to North Dakota. I stopped watching after that, but it's just kind of cool. It's like, here's this object that's literally been almost completely all the way around the world in 100 people's hands. So.
And its original mission was to visit all 50 states, and the first thing it did was leave the United States.
Yeah. So the very first stop, it left the country. Well, that was the other amazing thing. It was supposed to visit all 50 states. Was its written mission. And
that's just a challenge. And somebody says,
yeah.
Take it
a lot of people don't care. It's like, well, it's good for them just to move. You know, just to see that they're active. And they do go missing, so it's a risk. You pay a couple bucks for these things, and you release it and see what happens, right?
They don't have any little tracking devices on them that you can tell where they are?
The problem is they're kind of expensive, and the batteries will probably die fairly soon. So, yeah, there's been people thinking of how to do that. Yeah, or someone's holding it, but they lost it, or it was in a cache, but it's not there anymore. So, anyway. Yeah. So, and the last part that I was just talking about is geocaching has gotten to the point now where there's enough geocachers out there. It connects very well with tourism. So, in my opinion, any smart tourism organization will pick up geocaching and hide caches in your cities, your parks. You know, there's 6 million cachers now. Use it to bring people to your gem attraction, right? And some organizations, if you use a geocoin as an incentive, if you find X number of caches, there's a number of organizations I've seen that do that. National Parks Canada has done that. They had various parks. Grasslands, you finish theirs, they have a geocoin you can get. Some in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, they've got different coins. They're picking up on that pretty well. And then another thing that geocaching.com announced recently is this geo tourism, geo trails. So tourism organizations will set up a series of caches and actually list it on the geocaching site as a specific trail, and you can download a bookmark list with X number of caches. In Saskatchewan, just a couple months ago, the Cypress Hills destination area set up theirs. I think they have about 20 geocaches that they're promoting on geocaching.com, so that's very cool. And Saskatchewan Parks has done it as well a couple years ago with their 80th anniversary. They intended to put out 80 geocaches in all their parks across the province. I don't know if they actually got to 80, but they were working on it. And yeah, so if you want to do geocaching, most of you, I think, gotten at least this far, but www.geocaching.com. Account is free. If you use it more heavily to get some of the more advanced features, like doing bulk downloads and pocket queries, Google Maps, instant notification emails when new caches are published, fun stuff like that, that's where the premium account comes in. You can search for your cache, put in your postal code, and you can see the map and scroll around. It's endless fun just scrolling around the world and seeing what parts of the world have caches. And they're on all the continents, including Antarctica. So that's it. I'm open to questions if anybody has any. Thank you. Yeah, definitely take a look at the vendors because there's all kinds of really creative geocaches and geocoins and trackables. It's a lot nicer to see this stuff in person. Geocaching stores are few and far between, and usually it's online purchases, so this is one of those rare opportunities you have to see, touch and feel the stuff in person.
What would you recommend for starter?
What's that?